The younger girls were taken to the Cootamundra training home to be trained by Protection Board matrons as domestic servants before being sent out into their apprenticeship.
But assistant matron was pretty tough, and I think she really had to, I suppose she felt she had to be, but she was the one that taught us the cooking and house work and things. When we were there at that training school, we used to go around to the back of the homes and have a weep, 2 or 3 of us, you know, for our home. We were supposed to know all about a stove and the cooking in it, but all the things that we cooked we were very lucky to be able to have it to cook. Was the ingredients was a damper. And mostly when we didn't have the stoves, it was in the ashes. And pretty nice when I come to think of it too, they tasted. But actually, after a couple of teachings, she expected you to know, you know, before we'd realize we'd have a real hard smack in the face. I can remember a girl's mouth bleeding with the punishment that she had, and we were scared stiff before they even went in to the kitchen to learn, you know, the cooking. But I feel that their teaching was very strong, and I have marks on my body right now from the beltings I had, you know. I was only there about 3 months before they took me with another girl to Sydney, where we were collected off the train by two policemen, 2 burly big policemen.
Let us sing a song of Sydney town, fairest city of our land.
Many of the girls were taken to work in the homes of middle-class whites in the cities. These employers, or masters as they were called, were selected and approved by Protection Board inspectors. They were to be responsible for the training, welfare and wages of any Aboriginal child in their employment.
I was only 13, you know, when I first went there, and then I had to wash the baby's nappies and one thing and another, you see, and thing I never had to do home or didn't know anything about, so I used to hide some of them in the autumn, and she found them, and she was that mad with me that she rubbed them all over my head and my face. So, I mean, that was another thing.
They used to wake me up at 5:30 in the morning, and I had to do everything, the washing, the ironing and cooking, and I hardly knew how to cook, but I pretty soon learned. I worked 7 days a week. Whatever had to be done in the house, I did it. At Cameron's, Mr. and Mrs. Cameron's, it was 1 and 6 a week. A shilling into a trust fund with the AP board, and 6pence a week pocket money for me. But I never ever got that 6pence. And different people have said to me, why didn't you ask for it? But you just didn't do those things. If I'd have asked for it, I probably would, you know, said, well, I'm putting it, she probably would have said, oh, I'm putting it away for you, or something like that. But she dressed me not well. I didn't wear a pair of shoes until I was, all the time I was with her. Children were always well dressed and that. And now these were missionaries, more or less, and preaching the word of God to you. They drummed it in our ears from morning till night. For some reason or other, I don't know what I did, but I wasn't supposed to have any tea. I was to go without tea that night. And but I was in the kitchen to say grace. You say grace in there, then they send you out. So I sat on the veranda outside. The next thing I hear this little boy, his name was Colin, crying, and his mother just pushed him out the door and closed the door on him. he just flew over to me. I put my arms out, and he just cuddled me around the neck, and then I said to him, I said, "Don't cry, don't cry," and he stopped crying, and I think the mother must have missed him crying, and the next thing she opens the door and saw me with my arms around him and his around me, and anyway, she came over to me and grabbed the little fella and took him away from me, and she turned around, she said to me, "Don't you ever put your hands on that boy again." And I thought to myself, there's that poor little boy, he just wanted comfort. And this is, I don't know whether she thought that the black was going to rub off on the white or what, but those are kind of things that you had to put up with. You're not allowed to get fond of the children. You don't show them any love or anything. You're just there, just to look, do the work.
In the house and out the door, chopping wood and scrubbing floors, washing, ironing, mending too, sometimes making kids but just you. I'll do it all for Jesus. I'll do it all for Jesus. I'll do it all for Jesus. He done so much for me.
Yes, I mean, it was just quite an ordinary thing to be called Richard Black and or a savage or anything like that. And years later, I just realized that I was a Richard Black. I was miserable, and I tried to take, I don't know if I told you, but I took poison. It was rough on rats, but it was pretty rough on me, believe me. Well, I ran away in the end, I reached the age, you see, of 15 or 16, and being caged up and not seeing people my own age was a bit, I didn't realize that I was growing up. And I went out, somebody I went out with, my sister, I think it was, she ran away too, but she managed to get away. She's darker than I, and we used to go across in the ferry boats, at Mossman Bay, for rides at first. But then I got a little bit further and further, you see.
After I served my apprenticeship, I was 19 years of age then, and then I went around to see my mother. I heard that she wanted to see me, so I went around to see her and knocked on the door, and she came to the door, and we were just like strangers, absolutely strangers. We just didn't, more or less, there was nothing there, and
looking back on it now, I could see it as a type of slave labour. But the mission was supplying cheap labour for the stations round about, housemaids. Lots of the girls came back pregnant and lived with their mothers on the reserve until they ended up living with one of the men on the reserve. A lot of them came back with half-caste children, It was pretty bad.
By 1930, over a third of Aboriginal children had been sent into apprenticeship. Many ran away. Some were caught, but others made it home. The Protection Board, seeing that they couldn't keep the children away from the reserves as planned, issued orders to managers to set up marriages. The girls' training might have a civilising effect on the men.
On our reserve, Allegundy Island, the manager's wife, she arranged marriages for these girls that came from Sydney back up there, because they'd been down here and served there 5 years. And Anyway, she arranged the marriages and they all got married. She introduced them to each other, and I don't know what she said, but anyway, they ended up at the altar. When I went home to her, she tried the same thing on me. She got in touch with him and we had to meet down, somewhere. And anyway, I saw him and honestly, I didn't have any feelings. He may have. But, and I said to him, I'm sorry. I said, but I just want to be single a little bit longer.
The Protection Board still wanted to close down the reserves and refused to spend any more money on their upkeep. In the early 1930s, sickness spread through many reserves. Again, young Aborigines were forced away from their homes to travel the state looking for work. On the road, things were just as bad. The 1930s in Australia were depression times. Over 1/3 of the workforce was out of work and on the road as well. For the first time, a lot of whites met with Aborigines and saw the terrible conditions they were forced to live under. Those Aborigines who made it to the city found that things were just as tough.
Hungry, out of work, kept alive on handouts. There's so many now, I don't even stand out. It's a prison, we just have to get out. Join together now, and we'll fight our way out.
Out of these hard times grew the feeling that people had to get together and organise to make changes.
That the task of the Communist Party today is one thing and one thing alone, and that is to smash fascism. Peaceful social change, and we will fight to the last for peaceful social change.
Actually, we were finished then from we reached the age of 21. They couldn't keep us any further, but then I went to Melbourne, and the lady that I stayed with, and her husband was George Franks. He was the head of Trades Hall and this and that and everything, Well, he was a well-known communist too. He used to take me to all the meetings. They were very interested in the downtrodden people. Well, I felt that my people were very downtrodden, I wasn't backward in coming forward and saying what I felt, They seemed to speak a lot of what I was feeling, It built up my thinking. It came out in words then, you see, and it was a wonderful way of putting my people's plight in the eyes of the world. I feel so much. What can we do to save them? Save our people of the different tribes. To do this, we must have equal rights so that my people can have the same opportunities as our white brothers and sisters.
It's all in the book. You see,
Other Aborigines who came to the city to escape the Protection Board rule began to take the platform and speak out publicly.
It quite amuses me to hear the people saying I don't like